welcome to Big Performance Podcast. I am Alex Elish, and we are talking to entrepreneurs and figuring out the best way to start the business that they are running. Today, my guest is Mike Brevik. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Alex. How's it going?
Good so far. You are a wonderful creative and branding agency founder, right?
Yep.
This is an interesting conversation because the the path that you needed to go through from a creative to a business person, and I wonder how it is for you to is it easy for you to change the hats from creative to business, and how was it that you went into the business side of the processes?
Yeah, creatives will know what I'm talking about, but it seems like you're either right brained or left brain, and right brain is the creative side, and left brain's more analog. It's more analytical. It's a little bit more, um, more accounting, and it's that kind of a mindset. And I've always been a little of both, but I always leaned into the creative side, and that's just kind of where I was more comfortable and where I honestly had more fun. And throughout my career, I've always been heavy right brain. I was, an illustrator, cartoonist, a graphic artist, and I was on the creative side. But what happened over the course of my career is that I would run into these challenges where, my right brain couldn't get me through it. And it's like there were technical issues. And when I went from graphic design to web design, there were programmatic issues. And then when I went into a leadership role, there were like, well, how does that work? And all of a sudden, it's like the further I went into my career, the more I had to kind of lean on and reach into the left side of my brain to kind of like figure things out and to be more analytical and to study psychology and leadership and all these different things. So the transition itself, like it just happened over time, over a long period of time. But I mean, man, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't figure out something I don't know. So I always still kind of lean on that creative side, and it's actually more fun for me. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, like I'm always tasked with something I don't know, and I have to kind of find that balance. And I would also say that I think having a creative approach to using the left side of my brain to whether it's accounting, business, entrepreneurship, whatever it is, I think allows me to see both sides, but I think it allows me to create and come up with solutions that are a little out of the box. And I think it's been a huge benefit. It's been a huge learning curve. It's not been easy. Um, but I think it's also given us a little bit of a unique position within the agency world as well.
How did you transition from an artist, from the craftsman, into the business, from freelance to having the team?
It happened very naturally. Um, Over the course of my career, I had had different splashes of experience and different things, but when I started my business, I had as a artist and graphic artist and whatnot, we all have that side hustle, and we all have a little bit of we're doing side projects and kind of trying to feed that creativity a little bit. Like anybody else, I had always done that. So when I was transitioning out of corporate, I had already kind of had some of those things in the works. It was just a matter of, did I want to go all in or did I not want to go all in? And in trying to make that decision, I had hired, I basically, business coaches will give you like a free consultation. I had gone to a business coach for that free consultation, and I kind of explained to him the crossroads I was at. And he came back to me with like one simple question. He's like, "Are you employable?" And I had to sit and think about it for a second. I'm like, "I don't know what you mean." And he's like, "Well, I mean, if you lost your job today, could you go find another one?" And I'm like, "I think so." I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, the answer is yes. And he's like, "Well, then why wouldn't you try this?" So when I jumped and actually made the leap from employment to self-employment or unemployment, however you want to say it, um, that's as far as I'd gotten. And it was like upon that first day, it was like, oh my God, I got a lot to figure out here. I got to do my own accounting. I got to find my own tax prep person. I got, I have to get life insurance, or not life insurance, but health insurance. Um, am I doing this by myself? Am I doing this with people? So like I instantly kind of went into this kind of, I don't know, survival mode or educational mode where I had to kind of figure this stuff out. And it was slow, it's slow over time, but like within the first 12 to 24 months, I was a solopreneur. I was doing my own sales, my own work, my own execution. And it just slowly happened over time where, every year that went by, I bit off just a little bit more than I could chew. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, now I got to bring in one person, and one person turned to two, and two turned to four. And then as I've been, kind of slowly growing the agency, obviously I'm just kind of backpedaling and playing defense on the challenges that come from that. So it was a process over time, but it didn't, parts of it came naturally, and other parts of it, I've had a couple, two, three different business coaches over the course of, basically my entrepreneurship, a lot of leadership books, a lot of YouTube videos, so I'm
Yeah,
studying
I
and kind
know.
of,
So this is the slow and steady way where you had this nice growth. But let's use the example that you had with your business coach. Let's say that you lose your agency today. Like, you don't have an agency. What would be the short way that you will use right now with the knowledge that you have to get everything back, to build it all together again?
I would have, I mean, the first and foremost thing is I would define my vision, because that's, I had a vision and kind of a direction that I wanted to go. And I would say it was, 60% concrete and 40% was kind of gray. And I was learning as I went. And it was, to be negotiated to a degree.
Yeah,
I would switch that to, that vision needs to be 80+% locked in. And when that 80%'s locked in, you need to follow it, and you need to be uncompromised, and you need to stick to it. Because the problem is with entrepreneurship is there's 1,000 ways to do this. And you're going to get people chirping in your ear, and you're going to get people that give you all kinds of good advice, bad advice, and otherwise. And you have to be the filter. You have to know when to make the right decisions, the bad decisions, and you're going to make some wrong ones. So just get ready for that. But if you're locked in on your vision and you know exactly what you're doing, your ability to make good decisions, not only from your own research, but from the advice and the people around you, is going to be that much higher. And you just have to stay consistent with the plan, and be ready to pivot when you have to, but be ready to stick to it and kind of see it through. I not only have seen this with other entrepreneurs, but I've made this mistake myself. We get distracted by shiny things, and people throw ideas out there, you think there's a shortcut, or you think there's a way to kind of circumvent the process. More times than not, it's an illusion. It doesn't work that way. And when the mistakes happen like that, they set you back and they throw you off the path. So like, to get it back to your question, create that plan, create that vision, and then really commit to it, stick to it. Like, I'm in my ninth year. I mean, we're coming up on a decade here. I think if I was to start over from scratch, I could get to the point where I'm at inside of 2 to 3 years. I could fast track it a lot, a lot easier than I did it the first time, because I had to learn some things, and I had to go through some things. And the biggest thing I would say too, if your goal is to build a team, um, just don't compromise on that. Make sure you're bringing in the right people, making sure I mean, you need to take care of people as well, but you need to bring in people that understand the vision, and are in it for the right reasons, and they're in it to take care of you. Again, you're still going to make those mistakes. There's a few that are going to slip through the cracks, and that's totally acceptable. That's fine. but don't compromise when building that team, because when you surround yourself with super strong people or people that are even smarter than you, things happen really fast, and it's a good problem to have.
This is a great piece of advice. And I always wondered, how do my guests get so like magically on point for me as an entrepreneur who's looking for advice in this specific moment. So every guest seemed to have like an competitive edge on me, and they share the best thing that they can. Awesome. All right. So when you are niched and locked into the vision, what would you do next? Would you go for the team, or would you go for the clients, or would you go for infrastructure stuff?
Well, there's a few things that happen all simultaneously, and you have to kind of manage it. And I would say those things are, when you get the vision locked in and you're working your business, you have to get organized. You have to don't cut corners on the bookkeeping. Don't cut corners on the structure. Don't cut corners on the processes. Like a lot of these things, you can fake it. You can get to your tax guy when you feel like it a couple times a year, and you can shortcut the process a little bit because it all lives up here. And there's a lot of ways you can fake it to make it, so to speak. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've done it, but when you have to do it, do it. But always keep it on the top of your list to structure, build these things, make these things official. Because when you bring in people and you bring in the other assets that you need, you're going to need to lean on that stuff. And also, when you put those structures and that clarity in place, you really start to figure out where you're wasting time. And I would say one of the number one places that entrepreneurs waste time is they do their own books and they're trying to be an accountant or they're trying to be an operations person. That's not where they need to be. They need to be where they can generate cash. So for me, I have no sales team, and I haven't from the beginning. The only way for me to bring work in is for me to get out there and network and meet people and find work. So it's a very simple question as well, is that time better spent or worth more to you than sitting there managing a spreadsheet? Absolutely. So find somebody else to manage that spreadsheet. There, as entrepreneurs, we're trying to conserve cash and trying to be cheap, and we're like, oh, I don't know if I can afford to bring in a bookkeeper right now. And it's very simple. It's like, well, if you can go out and sell at the rate of, say, $100 an hour and your bookkeeper costs $50 an hour, you're $50 ahead already. So you have to think that way and you have to be ready for that, because every one of those things that you keep on your plate that slow you down in the sales and production process are essentially slowing down the growth of your business. And that's like, it's one of the biggest lessons I think we all learn as entrepreneurs and business owners. But I think it's also one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And when you do that, again, it identifies the gaps. You kind of know where your next person needs to come in. You kind of know what skill set you need. The clarity of delegation and the clarity of relinquishing some of these things, it actually shows you the path for what you need to do next. And now, team, as far as like your question, team isn't for everybody. Some people want to keep it small. Some people want to go bigger. Some people just want to be solopreneurs. But I think you have to think about what makes this process easier for me and what makes this process, um, where does it allow me to do my best work? So if I'm on the branding side or the sales side or whatever it is, I need to relinquish myself of those tasks that actually don't serve me, and I need to go after the parts that I'm really good at and find somebody else who's really good at the things that I want to get rid of. So just in doing that, you'll see the business grow and you'll see the team start to develop, and then at that point you can start to decide, do I want to go bigger? Do I want to stop there? Do we want to just maybe increase the pipe as far as like, the customers we can handle? Because it's a very momentum based game when you because when it starts rolling, it's hard to stop it. It's just it kind of just takes on a life of its own. But that awareness and that self awareness is huge in making those decisions along the way.
Awesome. What does work for you in terms of bringing the client flow? What would you say that your podcast brings a lot of people to you, or you go there and network and do cold emails, warm emails? What is it that fills the pipeline?
It's actually a mix of everything, and again, it's kind of a momentous kind of a thing because I would say I started the first, not that I wasn't doing other things, but primarily, like I spent the first 3 or 4 years just doing hardcore networking, going to the Tuesday morning meetings, drinking coffee, meeting people, like coffee dates, happy hours. Like I was very boots on the ground for the first couple 2 or 3 years to just kind of get the ball rolling. And I slowly kind of migrated out of that into more of a digital approach where I was, okay, so now I've got some face to face contacts and some networking happening. I transitioned and kind of migrated towards LinkedIn, email, drip campaigns, started to really focus on my content delivery for social media and kind of transition to more of a digital. So I was still kind of doing all of those things, but I was reprioritizing and kind of putting my efforts where I needed to fill those gaps. And then from there is when I started to do the podcast and I started going on other people's podcasts. And now that I've got all these things kind of working together, the leads kind of come in from all kinds of different places. But what I would say as far as like how they work together, um, you got to know people and you have to get out there and you have to be your brand. So I think that's the physical, even what we're doing right now, you probably get a sense of who I am and I probably get a sense of who you are. So there's like a physical transaction happening, so to speak. We're getting to know each other. And that to me is like the face to face networking. The digital piece is just, I'm just wanting to stay top of mind. Like, if you really think about it on social media, digital advertising, whatever, you're probably not digesting every word, every letter, everything that's thrown in front of you, but subliminally, these things are falling in front of you. And over time, you're able to say, oh man, I've seen that logo before. Or now who is this? And you'll eventually, take notice. And that's that piece. So again, physical, digital, all these things are working together. And then I believe what I think is unique about the podcast element, which is exactly what you're doing, is it gives people a peek behind the curtain as to who you really are in a conversation type setting. People are throwing questions at you. You have to answer them. Like you're giving people a sense. It's not only content, and I mean, obviously they can digest it as they will and learn from it and move on to something else. But if they're vetting me out or vetting you out as a potential business partner or a company they'd like to work with, they can get a really good sense of what it's like to talk to that guy or work with those people. Or, you really give them an opportunity to get to know you before they really know you. And I think there's a credibility that's inherent in that. I think there's obviously a lot of knowledge that can get given away in that. And in the agency world, in the marketing world, there was a time, and maybe some agencies still do this, but there was a time where you had to pay for all that. Like, I'm not giving away my expertise unless you pay me for this or hire me for consulting for this. And like there was such a monetization of knowledge. And with podcasts, with YouTube, with everything that, this whole content delivery machine out there, just give it away, man. Like, just share your thoughts, share. There's so much out there that there's nothing wrong with just giving it away and being good stewards of the industry. And if you're the right fit, then you'll attract people. And if you're not, you won't. It's nothing that needs to necessarily be coveted. And I think that's the other benefit of the podcast, is that it allows you to be a giver and just share that knowledge. So kind of wrap it up to your question, all of these things, like it took me a progressional, you know, kind of steps in the process, or it took me time to get to where I'm at. But now that I'm doing it, I'm actually working all the angles together. And even throughout the year, maybe one is a more of a priority than the other. But they're all kind of working together in order to kind of push this ball uphill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. In the digital realm that you transition to, LinkedIn, email, what's your thing there?
I mean, if you Google it, whatever, you're going to find there's a lot of best practices.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tactical strategy. I mean, and
you,
I
you,
can't,
you know what I'm interested in. On the recent podcast, we talked about what kind of marketing advice does GPT give, and we figured
oh,
out that sometimes and quite often the actual advice that I will get from experts is in the bottom of GPT list. So it
oh,
will give the most frequent, the stupidest advice first, and then there would be something that is interesting in the bottom of the list. So people have no way to figure it out and get to there by trying. So yeah,
yep.
what is your thing?
So, um, with all those best practices, whatever Chat GPT tells you to do, like I pay attention to that stuff. I look at that stuff. I'm interested in that stuff. But none of that necessarily trumps the approach that I have, which is just to be myself and to be authentic. So even on LinkedIn, like if you're on LinkedIn and you're active, everybody's getting solicitation emails, right? They show up on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. I mean, you just know you're being marketed towards, and whatever, that's fine. But there's a disingenuine experience there that when you get these emails from people that you're like, I just don't know if I'm one of how many thousand that they're probably blasting. So you don't necessarily feel like it's a solid connection sometimes. So my approach to even social media, email drip campaigns, or even what I do on LinkedIn is I have a very personal approach to it where I look at the people I want to connect to. I actually send my own messages. I respond to all my messages, and I respond to them in such a personal way that they know it's not Chat GPT. So like it's nothing for me to send an email or a message to somebody on LinkedIn that starts out with, "Hey dude, I was checking out your profile," because like that's how I talk. So I write my emails like I talk. I try to make them as authentic and as genuine as possible and personable as possible, because what I'm really trying to do is, if I'm trying to connect with that person, I'm trying to punch through their assumption that this is a bot, or this is a Chat GPT thing, or this is some automation that's running, because I really want to connect with them. I want to stand out, and I want them to know there's a human on the other side. And I still get ignored. I mean, I still get, people that don't reply to me. Um, but more times than not too, I get responses where people will say like, "Hey, thanks for the message, but man, I love your title," or they're saying things personally back to me where I know that they got it. Like it clicked to them that this was a personal communication based off of what they send me. So I apply that to all my marketing, because I want them to feel that experience. Because my agency, yes, we deliver marketing services, but we're a relationship based agency. Like we work with people, we take care of the people we work with, and it's about the people more than it is the work.
How would you at some point outsource part of this communication to your people? And how would you say that your people do as much on the communication front as you do?
No, at this point they do not. And I will say that like we are on a path where I'm trying to build the understanding of, and I'm trying to build the team up so that they can participate in those communications and in those, those efforts. But it's a process to get them there. And it's for two reasons. For one, if they have, little to no experience, I mean, I'm coming up on 30 years. So to be fair, if they don't have that kind of experience, it needs to be taught to them. And obviously I need to teach them, um, the CyberDogs way and how we want to do it and all those kinds of things. But also, even the people that have come to my agency that work for me that have marketing experience, they're typically packing all the stuff we don't do. Like their experiences are coming from those best practices, or those experiences are coming from agencies that were more transactional. And good for them. I'm glad they had experience in those areas, but we have to deconstruct that in a way and teach them that it's more about relationships, that it's more about, being human and being authentic. And so there is a process to that. And to answer your question, the goal is yes. I mean, I would love to get as much of that off my plate as possible and put them in this situations to be spokespersons and ambassadors of the brand. But it's a process. It's going to take time, because the other thing, and this is, just my own personal challenge for my brand, is I get it. I am the face of the brand, or at least for now I am. Um, but we have a very we, not me mindset in our culture and at CyberDogs. And the only way to make that come to fruition is we have to lift the rest of the team up to be as important as I am, and not that they're not, but on the surface, it's more people see me than anybody else.
I get it.
Yeah.
What would be your growth point for the next year as a company?
We're the general answer is, we're trying to grow sales and just overall grow as a company. But my internal goals, we are very heavy into operations in 2024 to basically improve all our foundational processes, SOPs, efficiencies. How do we put everybody on the team on a more clear and more aggressive path towards, where they want to go from a professional standpoint? um, what does excellence look like we're really defining that. um, our goal as an agency, as CyberDogs, we don't want to just be an agency that does marketing work. Like there's a lot of agencies out there, they're in the marketing industry, they do marketing work, and that's as far as they ever get. Yes, we do that too, but my goal is I want CyberDogs to be a lifestyle brand. I want CyberDogs to be an example of excellence. I want CyberDogs to be sought after in the agency world for producing certain kinds of results. Like my goals are a lot bigger as far as like aspirational versus just routinely doing certain services. So what we do, the delivery mechanism or the vehicle that we're riding in to get there, yes, is marketing, but our goal is to, kind of chase excellence and do big things in the industry. And that's what we're spending 2024 working on, is how do we shore up every little, think about it like it's this massive panel of, buttons and levers. Like we're making adjustments internally right now to get to a bigger place.
That is that is actually inspiring me to go and do some work.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate
hopefully
that, but to be
yeah,
fully honest, it kind of sucks because like we have to be critical of ourselves. So we've spent, we're in July now, but we've spent, over half the year being critical, picking ourselves apart, tearing apart things that were probably, I hate this term, but were probably good enough. And it's a grind. And I can tell, I can be honest with you, I think the team is, they're over it. Like this is not that fun. And it wasn't meant to be, because the goal is when we get to the end of the year, we're going to be better than when we started. That's the goal. So we're embracing the suckiness of this whole thing. Um, but it's a means to an end, and it's a means to bigger things. So it is fun. It is inspiring to a degree, but it's something, it's a grind that we signed up for, and it's not a pleasure cruise, but it's part of the journey. So
What would you say would be your 30-second advice to people who are transitioning from solo design and branding work to a agency?
um I think it's, the first thing is you have to decide if you want to be a solopreneur or if you want to work with a team. I think solopreneur, freelancer, like that mindset, I don't want to say it's easier, but you have different things to think about because you're only essentially maybe taking care of yourself and the few resources that you might have on the outside, from bookkeeping to tax prep to whatever. So I think it starts the same though. What's your vision? Is it about making a certain dollar amount? Is it about, being known as something? Like, what's your vision? Figure that out. But then same can be said for if you're somebody who wants to build a team. I think you have to be I think there's a discipline, there's an elevation and discipline that happens with, if you want to build a team. What does that look like? What is realistic? And try to map it out the best you can. And the biggest thing I would say for all entrepreneurs is you have to embrace risk. Like, you don't know unless you try. You don't know you can fly until you jump out of that plane. Like, if you're somebody who struggles with making decisions and second guessing yourself, and you need to get over it and figure it out, because you don't know unless you put your, you can't win that big hand of blackjack unless you put your chips on the table. And yes, be smart, be methodical, try to make smart decisions, but you gotta try, you gotta swing, you gotta go for it. It is hard, it's scary, and I'll you're gonna lose sometimes too, I'll put that out there. But you have to keep trying, because waiting around for the big thing to happen, it's a long wait. And I don't know if it ever does happen that way. You have to stick your neck out there and go for it.
It's interesting. How do you approach the team dynamic when you understand that you need to inject some risk into the development, so that it does not stop, moves forward, but your team says, maybe this is one of those risks that we can avoid.
I
What's your position
I,
there?
th- I think the biggest thing is transparency. Because I don't always come to these decisions on my own either. Like, I talked with my team and I say, here's what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? I need your help on this. And sometimes they'll, "Oh, I don't know, Mike, that's up to you." Like, sometimes they'll throw it right back at me, but other times they'll give me advice. They'll help me make the decision, or even pivot me a different way where it's like, okay, that makes sense. And we'll do it together. I think that's really important in building a solid team, is you have to include the people, and you have to make them part of the process, and you have to make them vested in that way. And if you have good people, um, I think they notice that, but also they take some ownership over it too. Even though it's, at the end of the day, it's maybe my risk. It might be my finance. It might be I'm the one who's going to pay in the end if it doesn't work out. But they also understand that, so they're trying to be extra cautious, helpful, supportive. Like, we're kind of all doing this together. So I think that transparency and that inclusion is huge. And I'm very it's like I said, it's a we not me kind of a thing. So that's kind of our mantra internally, and they know that I have a very all ships rise with the tide type of mentality. So whatever they're doing versus what I'm doing, or we collaborate on something, there's a lot of trust there. At least I feel like there is, but that's also huge, is we have to trust each other and know that, Mike's making these decisions for the betterment of everybody, not just himself. So even like, to your question, when I brought in the operations team and we started that whole initiative here in 2024, um, there was some doubts. There was some like, well, am I doing a bad job? Why are we bringing in like there was some self-reflection there where I think people might have thought, what is this about? But by the time we had the discussion and we talked through why it is what it is, they themselves were admitting like, oh my God, you're so right. That's gonna help that out a ton. And again, it's being critical. It's being honest about our flaws and kind of knowing where we need to improve. And um, everybody embraced it from that point on. So
One super interesting point that I am thinking about is, how do you choose the right clients? How do you see that they vibe with what you are building and that they would be a good fit to work with?
so in my experience, first and foremost, you're gonna have some that just slip through the cracks. It's like dating or anything else. Like, man, they seem so cool when I first, like they will say the right things and they will slip through the crack, and then you'll find out it's not a fit later. So that just happens. It doesn't mean you have a bad process or that it's the end of the world, but it does happen. But to answer your question, for me, it's just, I feel like I have a good sense of people and I have a good sense of business and kind of where they're at. So I'm definitely evaluating them throughout the discovery process. And we have a series, just so you know, we have a series of meetups, so to speak, where we have an initial get to know CyberDogs, get to know the client. We have a discovery call. We have a series of calls that happen that allow us to kind of flush out those details as to whether or not a client is a good fit. And that's where I can interact with them and kind of get a sense of whether or not they're going to be a good fit. But then also, I just come to all of those very authentic. Like, I don't put on a shirt and tie. I don't have a sales pitch. I don't hit them with a big elaborate pitch deck. I don't like, there's no uh song and dance or bells and whistles to be had in my process, because I want them to feel organic. I want them to feel authentic. I want them to feel like this is what it's like to collaborate and work with CyberDogs, so that if it's not for them, they can either A, show their true colors, or B, opt out at that point. But also, it's a very defenseless process where they're allowed to put their guard down and just be who they are as well. Because when we work with our clients and we build these relationships, we need to know who they are and what their struggles are and what their pain points are before we can truly come in and fix them or help them solve those problems. Um, so as far as like, what does that look like? How do we identify good from bad? It's all within that process, but it's all coming from that CyberDog's authentic place to try to flush it out with, from them, and again, some slip through the cracks and some of them feel uncomfortable with that. They're like, some people want to be sold to, they want, like, I want you to sell me. I want you to blow smoke up my butt. I want you to tell me things that, like, they just want to feel sold to. And when that doesn't happen, sometimes it's refreshing and sometimes it's not a good fit.
Yeah, I got a few of those examples
Yeah.
to think about.
Like, I've actually had clients, like, we've gone through the process, and because it's like you and I are talking, it's just so organic. They're like, "So this is it? Like, when is the sales pitch?" Like, they're waiting to be presented to in a way. And I'm like, I don't do that. Like, when we get to the proposal phase and we get to the parts where we need to talk dollars and cents and deliverables and stuff, like, yeah, I mean, we'll whip together a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint or do some of those things, but I'm not here to necessarily convince you of something you don't know you need. Like, I need you to tell me what you want, what you need, and then I can tell you if I deliver, and then we can collaborate from there. But there's a certain amount of buy-in that we have to see from the client in order to know if they're a good fit, you know? And I think as an
Yeah,
entrepreneur,
I- I- it's
you have to be bought in.
it's a thank you for articulating that, because I was not capable of doing that. And when the client tells me, all right, now this is the point where you guess what I want. You send me your offer, and I will compare it to a dozen of other offers from other people. And I'm
Right.
like, and I have this negative feeling. I'm like, screw you. I will not be doing work for you without understanding what you really want, so you can compare me to other guys. And I, well, in the starting days of the business, I did not get, I thought like, this is me, this is my fault, that I don't like that person, that I don't like my services compared to bunch of other random guys. Yeah, but as you are putting it out, it just makes sense to me, really.
With what you just described there, and I've seen that and experienced that as well. With what you've described there, what I take from that is that you have a tolerance of acceptable, like the results kind of don't matter as long as we fit into your tolerance. It's really about how much I'm willing to give up for the price. So as a customer, if I'm going out there and just getting bids and I'm going to sit down and figure out which bid fits me, I'm not looking at the right things. Like, I'm not, like, I'm just looking at price and tolerance of, deliverability. You're not looking for something exceptional. You're not looking for a relationship. You're not looking for a connection. You're not looking for, a company that cares. You're not looking for the things that really matter. And once I know that, I know you're not a good fit for me, because we care, like we try to build relationships with all our customers, and above and beyond wanting to hit a home run for the customer, like we want the best for the people we work with. We also want the best for ourselves, because we can't be known as home run hitters if we don't hit home runs. So yes, I want to hit the home run hitter for you, but I also want to hit it for myself, because that's what gets us the next job or the next opportunity or whatever it is. So to find somebody that's dialed in, passionate, and got the skill set and whatever, those are the attributes I look for in partnerships, clients, even other agencies, versus this idea of, you know, let's see if your bid can fit within my box. Because that, I don't, like you said, I don't even know what the box is. We're not playing with all the information.
Yeah.
And that, you know, good for those agencies that work that way. We don't. It just doesn't work for us.
Mm. We might be very alike in this instance. What I was struggling with is that we are going into a bidding war with some unknown enemy. Then we deliver a project trying to fit the expectations that are not always communicated.
Yep.
And I'm not saying like, oh, our clients are bad with communication. We are as well. So there
Nope.
is a level communication level playing there. But we deliver the project, and we start finding that where our expertise was the strongest was not the main expectation of the client, and that sucks,
Right.
because
Or
we really pushed our work on a really high level, and they expected something else,
right.
something excellent in a different way.
Or the parameters in which they were telling you that mattered didn't actually fit the parameters of where your skills are best utilized. And then what's tough about that is you're given a question to answer, you answer it in which they tell you to answer it, and then later they say, "Well, I didn't know you guys were X, Y, and Z." And it's like, "Well, yeah, I know, because that wasn't the parameters in which I was put under to answer the question." And point is that, like,
This is a very interesting idea. Let me dumb it
yeah,
down because you were very smart about it. I can say it in my words. So we use words to communicate with clients, but clients are using the other words to communicate what they need. Something that they saw on Google, something that they saw from ChatGPT, and they send it to us instead of their own words that would tell us something. They use other words, throw it at us, and saying like, "You like those words? You understand? Like click through rate, conversion. We want that." And then we ship to these specifications that we are working with, and they're saying, "Nah, that's not what we needed." I'm like,
yeah.
"But that was the
And
thing."
and in fairness, like other agencies, the industry, even like you said, they go to ChatGPT or YouTube or whatever. In fairness to those clients, they don't know how to ask the question, or they don't necessarily, they don't maybe sometimes they don't even know exactly what they want. They just they piecemeal this, here's what I think I want kind of approach together, and that's what they start with. And it's an unfair situation for the client because they don't know. And one of the things I talk about, and this maybe even fits into one of your previous questions, but I talk about with my team all the time, is we have to play our game. We have to play offense, not defense. And what I mean by that is when a client comes to us with that kind of an approach where, it's somewhat fabricated from somewhere else, but it's also somewhat piecemealed in the fact that they don't know what they're asking for. We need to take over the conversation, and we need to drill into what really matters and what the pain points are. And like, we need to get to the root of what it is they want, so that they have the clarity of what we're doing or what we're proposing, but also so that it puts us in the position to do our best work and to succeed. Because if we just sit back and be reactive to that question that they ask that doesn't make much sense, and like, we're giving them just as bad of an answer as they ask the question. And there is a time where we need to take over. We're supposed to be the experts, and we're supposed to be leading them in this process, in this journey. So, more offense, not defense. We need to step up, and that's hard. I think that's hard for people to do. It's hard for people to do that to clients or prospects or whatever you want to say. Um, but I think that's a huge part of it, because again, we get it all the time where, like you said, they come to us with almost an unfair or a doom to fail type scenario. And it's like, is that really what the problem is, though? Like, or is that just as far as you got in how to ask the question?
Makes sense. I think you overloaded me. I have too many things to think about right now. I have a lot of new ideas, and the ideas that are better formulated when like my feelings about the stuff that I encounter in my world. Yeah,
Well, I will also say, though, like, I think this is where a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, agencies, this is where they get frustrated with the client, and they get frustrated with, why it isn't different. And the problem isn't necessarily that it's not served up to you in a different way or whatever. It's that you're not evolving in a way that puts you back into the driver's seat. you know. And it's you had asked earlier about good clients versus bad clients. What turns a bad client into a worse client is when you let them drive. When you're the marketing agency, or you're the expert, or you're the person that's providing the service, which you know all the expectations are tethered to what you do, and you let the client drive. Why would you do that? And it happens all the time, and I'm guilty of it. So let me put that out there. But it happens sometimes where the client's narrative, the way they position it, the way they say, well, this is what I want, this is what I expect, if that goes too far to the point where you're adhering to the client's version without meeting them in the middle, or calibrating it, or clarifying it, you're basically on a doomsday mission. Like you're doomed to fail at some point. So as much as we can, and hopefully 99% of the time, what we try to do is we want to drive the narrative. It might be inspired and influenced by what they said they wanted, or what their expectations are, but we drive the narrative. We tell them what's realistic. We tell them, here's what you're going to expect, and here's the cadence in which it happens, and here's the time frame in which you can expect these results. And but we have to step up and take ownership of that piece, so that we have a better chance of success, but also we educate the clients along with us in that journey. And you see it all the time, and again, we've done it where we bring a client in, and for whatever set of circumstances transpired, we're 6 months into the process, and we realize that the client's driving the whole thing. And then the question is okay, technically, who knows more about what you're doing, you or the client? And the answer should be, well, it's us. We're the experts. We're the marketing team, whatever. Then why are you letting them drive? That's the question. Like, if my team's listening, they're rolling their eyes because they've heard this before. But sometimes that happens. And again, it's not a knock on the client, but to be fair to the client, they came to us because we're the experts. They came to us because we're supposed to drive. So why are we letting them drive? And that's not a fault of the client. That's our fault. And we need to, and selfishly, you're gonna do yourself a much better service by recognizing that more times than not, than just continuing down that path of letting the client control the narrative.
You said that your team is listening and rolling their eyes. My team is listening and they have their eyes out, because no, we didn't hear that. We were struggling with it, we were failing with it, and uh, we used our last resources of will to not blame the client and to not blame us when this was the only choice that we got. We're like, somebody's failing. It's us or client, and we are brute forcing our way to not get bitter and move forward without assigning the blame
Yeah.
with this lose-lose scenario.
And
So
sometimes,
thank you for talking to my team as well.
well, and sometimes, what you have to remember is that it's not even, like, I know you kind of meant it metaphorically, but like it's not even like a fault of, or a blame of. It's just, that's not collaboration. And we like to collaborate with our clients, and if we can meet them halfway and take things off their plate, it'll naturally put us in the driver's seat. But I think sometimes in the entrepreneurial world, we're hungry to make the sale, or maybe we just really need a client right now. We'll kind of let our guard down, and we'll let a bad situation kind of ensue because we just need the work. And I get it. Again, I'm guilty of it. But the more you can recognize and take that narrative over, just the better, not only, the better that project, the better that relationship with the client, but it'll become a much more long-term relationship than anything else. Because in the defense of the client, they don't necessarily recognize that they're driving. They don't necessarily recognize that the failures that as a marketing team or whatever, the failures that you guys are experiencing are at their hand. They don't recognize that. They just go, well, I thought you guys were supposed to know how to do this. And like you said, like the reality is like, well, we do when we do it our way, but when we do it your way, like that's not how this works. So meeting them somewhere in the middle and having that conversation and being collaborative about it and making it a shared venture, that's the goal. And like I said, end up in the driver's seat if you can, but you're gonna see a much greater success with that. And it's easy to let the clients drive. Happens all the time. It still happens to us. Um, but it's almost 100% failure for cyber dogs when we let the client drive. Like it never ends well.
Great stuff. This is super value that you shared with me and the audience. Thank you so much. I think we will be wrapping it up because I cannot take it anymore. I cannot get any smarter today. I have a lot of stuff to think about.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Mike. Don't click any buttons. And you click the like button.